So this is John 15, 1 through 8. I am the real vine, and my Father is the farmer. He cuts off every branch of me that doesn't bear grapes, and every branch that is grape-bearing he prunes back so it will bear even more. You are already pruned back by the message I have spoken. Live in me, make your home in me just as I do in you. In the same way that a branch can't bear grapes by itself, but only by being joined to the vine, you can't bear fruit unless you are joined with me. I am the vine, you are the branches. When you're joined with me and I with you, the relation intimate and organic, the harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated, you can't produce a thing. Anyone who separates from me is dead wood, gathered up and thrown on the bonfire. But if you make yourselves at home with me, and my words are at home in you, you can be sure that whatever you ask will be listened to and acted upon. This is how my Father shows who he is, when you produce grapes, when you mature as my disciples. That's from the Message, in case you couldn't tell.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you all for bearing with a little bit of classroom education here. I feel like the Myers-Briggs can be a tool for us as we figure out how to be the vine, right? How to join the vine, how to be next to each other on the vine that is Jesus. How do we work together? I let Jean Kumaro do most of the talking today because I wanted us to take a minute back. I want to take us back and think about this question of what do these personality preferences mean for us as a church. Her talk is very deep, and she makes the allusion to the idea that there's just so much more she could say about the Myers-Briggs personality test. And it's true. Some of the videos were hours long, explaining all this stuff. And each time I've watched it, I've kind of gotten a little bit more understanding of how some of these things work, and some validation in my own head of seeing these different, ways that we butt up against different people as we're working on projects or making decisions. And I think in the last 10 years, a lot of churches have taken personality tests together. And in some ways, I think it's a healthy motivation. I think personality tests can help us get to know ourselves a little better and others, and give some space to be. Does that make sense? It's okay to be introverted. It's okay that a big social event is exhausting to you. It's okay to lean into thinking versus feeling. It's okay. We're wired different ways, and we are created by God, and those things aren't bad. So as we look at these ways of taking personality tests or understanding church together, I think it gives us some freedom to be. Often the church has pushed an agenda that says to everyone else, you lack. You are lacking. You're doing it wrong. You need to do better. You got to do something else. This is not good. Keep improving. Do, right? And that's not really healthy. But it's common. It's normal. And I think so this trend towards personality tests leans that way. But sometimes we churches just follow corporate paradigms, and that's not always a good thing either. The personality tests, if we use them well, I think they can help us know our difference, accept differences and know ourselves better. And I think it helps us learn our own blind spots, right? And know our preferences, like Jean said. The reason I chose the scripture today was because I think the whole idea of being together as a community is about being grafted into Jesus, being grafted into the vine that is Jesus. And then we all end up on this section of the vine that is Cedar Falls Mennonite Church, right? We all end up on this vine, grafted in together on this vine that is Jesus. And we don't end up grafted into the family of God because we are perfect, or that we are this perfect assemblage of all things. It's because we're choosing to follow God, and we're choosing to do it together. Now, Jesus does make it clear that if you aren't ready to listen to him, if you're not really understanding him, if you aren't ready to be encouraged, grown, and shaped by Jesus, this grafting is going to be kind of painful. It might not last. You might get trimmed out. Just as Jean says, there's going to be growth areas. Even if you have a preference to something, you might not be good at it. The point, I don't want to emphasize this point today. I'm not here to just talk about the idea of God connecting us together. I want us to talk about how God gifts us with passions, and then together we become a church. Does that make sense? We are a group of people with things, passions, talents, preferences, lacks, right? God gives us these gifts, and together we become a church. The vine that produces good fruit. Do we produce Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or Shiraz? I don't know. I don't know if that's important. But it is important that we produce fruit, and this fruit tells God's story well. So we can even produce our own fruit. I mean, there's numerous grape varietals, but we are definitely our own church, right? We're together. We have a way of being. And it started to show up when we did these tests, right? Does everybody remember? We have some very clear leanings. 22 people gave me their results in digital format, numbers, from the 16 personalities quiz we took. And as we look at the spectrum for each of these preference pairs, we are told something about who we are and how we work, right? There were only 5 of us who showed up as extroverts out of 22. So we do lean a little bit towards introversion. That's not a bad thing. It just is. We only have 5 observant and then 17 intuitive, right? We lean pretty heavily. Observant people want to look at the facts, but we lean heavily into this idea of visualizing past and future and imagining where we might be headed. Observant people lean more toward this doing, and intuitive people lean a little bit more towards dreaming. Only 4 thinking among 18 other feeling, right? A thinking person would ask, how does this help? And a feeling person might be more concerned with, who does this help? Thinking preference means you worry more about things we can see and touch and feel, but a feeling person is more into feelings, how things actually feel. Only 5 prospecting and 17 judging. Prospecting people do better with things that haven't do better when things haven't gone well, right? Prospecting have more space for failed plans. But we are judging people, and we'd much rather have 5 backup plans than have to figure out what to do after the first plan failed. Now, there's this last thing called turbulent versus assertive, and I sort of set it over here with this 16 different personalities because that's added by the 16 personalities to the Myers-Briggs. So we don't have as much information. People don't talk about it as much. But there were 9 turbulent and 11 assertive. I actually didn't get that letter for one person, so there's only a smaller data set there. But we weren't as disparate. We weren't as, we were a little more. The letter is added to Myers-Briggs by the 16 personalities that has the idea of an assertive person knows where they're going, they're going to go there, and it's going to be hard to interrupt them. And a turbulent person is more likely to get interrupted by a little bit of criticism, might kind of shut them down. Think about a assertive person as a Boeing 747 and a Cessna 2-seater as a turbulent. How is the wind going to affect each one? So what does that mean for us? I don't know. Maybe this experiment can be useful. I thank you, Lyle, for bringing it to us. You were one of the forces that helped us consider this as an exercise. Maybe it's helpful. Maybe it's not. When we look at this idea, it's really fascinating that 9 out of 22 of us, 9, so that's almost over 40%, right? We are this thing called an INFJ, which is less than 2% of the population are INFJ. So we're weird, and there's lots of us here. Somehow, we all got together, and we got grafted onto this vine, and then you hired another person, who's that same type of weirdo, and yeah, so here we are. This is who we are. This is how we gathered. We've both chosen, and we've chosen each other. We've walked in the door. We've many years ago, or maybe just a little bit ago, and we've gotten to know each other. So as we move into this reflection time, I want it to be a little bit different for us. I'm going to give you a few questions to think about, and I'm going to give you a little bit of extra time. I'm going to invite you to get up and take a look at the charts and the pictures on the back of the wall. I know some of you have taken looks before, some before worship. And I want you to remember what Gene Kumro says, that these things are preferences. They're not abilities. They're not capacities. They're just preferences. What do we generally lean to? Some of us are right in the middle of the spectrum. We're 51% intuitive, right? We're right in that middle. So we're straddling that. And others of us are 85 or 90% this or that, right? So during the reflection time, I want you to get up and check out the graphics and notice a few things. If you're in the picture, find yourself. Who's near you? Both in the pictures and in the charts, because some people were here on picture day but didn't send me numbers, and some people weren't here on picture day but did send me numbers. So there's different information in the charts and the pictures. Notice who's far away from you. Think about how you've interacted with them, how your time's been with them. Or notice anybody who's just far away from anyone. How might that experience be to be in a community that's so much this other way? Look at how there's big groupings of us in certain spots. At one number, there's sometimes like 4 or 5 people that are all in that same spot on one thing. Think a little bit about the outliers on each of these 4 letters. Generally, they're not the same person, right? They moves around. There's different people who kind of have one letter off or one letter off from the apparently preferred type of INFJ. Is that it? Right? Yeah. Okay. Now, who are the outliers? Right? How does that feel? And I want to add one little caveat as we start to contemplate who we are. In a corporate setting, often the way they use personality tests is to try to make sure that the organizations and the teams within them are diverse. Lots of different people with different ideas, different ways of thinking about things. And I'm not anti-diversity. You should know that by now if you've hung out a little bit with me. But remember that like-minded people can produce good things, right? The lack of diversity on a team doesn't mean it can't produce good things. I don't think that our lack of diversity is a lack overall, right? So don't see this idea that we have leanings or these ways that we've sort of self-selected and to be with each other as something that's missing. But think about what it might mean for us, how we might be gifted in a way that allows us to do things that other people wouldn't do, ways to deal with things that other people couldn't deal with. I believe God has worked us to bring us together for something. I don't think that any of us know what that means for the church, for our church, 10 years from now. But this gathering of vines does not lack. So I invite you now to take a minute to reflect whether you're seated or getting up and moving around. Think about who we are from this lens of this personality test, who we are in Christ in the different ways we are gifted. Think about who we are and how we work together. So I'm going to give you about 3 to 4 minutes to get up, move around, a little different than our normal silent stay in your seats